Luke 17, if you look, when Jesus was talking about stumbling blocks, and then he came to the end of that difficult teaching about if your brother repents, forgive him, and the apostles cried out, Lord, increase our faith, a very natural response to hard teaching. Lord, give us more faith to do the right thing. Jesus said, verse 6, Luke 17, the Lord said, if you had faith like a mustard seed, very small, you would say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted into the sea, and it would obey you. I talked to you about the root system of the mulberry tree and how deep it would go, and how they say it could live up to 600 years. Very deep root system. And Jesus is using powerful, vivid pictures like the Hebrews would use to show you that if something's deep in your soul, you can't let it go, you can't forgive it. If you have a little bit of faith, faith is the key to forgiveness. Faith, believing that God one day will work it all out, believing that He can give you the heart of heaven. And then Jesus says these words regarding doing the right thing. But which of you, 7, having a slave, Luke 17:7, plowing or tending sheep, will say to him when he has come in from the field, come immediately sit down to eat? But will he not say to him, prepare something for me to eat, and properly clothe yourself and serve me until I have eaten and drunk, and afterward you will eat and drink. You will take second place to the master. That's the idea of the text. He does not thank the slave because he did the things which were commanded, does he? Think of a servant. A servant is owned by the master. He's got a job description. He's got food on the table. He's got a roof over his head. The servant doesn't get a meal from the master doesn't get a meal from his servant and say, thank you very much for going out of your way today. No, that's his job description. Now, if the master wants to be nice, he can say thank you. But that is what the slave is required to do. So you too. Here's the connection. Verse 10. When you do all the things which are commanded you, and they are commands, and Jesus says all of them. When you've done all of them, you'll be working on that for the rest of your life, and so will I. When you've done all that is commanded of you, this is what you should say. We are unworthy slaves. He doesn't say, when you've done some of what was commanded you, you should say this. He says, when you do all that's commanded you, say these words. We are unworthy slaves or servants. We have done only that which we ought to have done. Now, what's the connection? It's clear. We have a master God. He is our maker. He is our Savior. He is our sustainer. We live in a society where everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but a great portion of the spoiled society believes that they're owed something. That's part of the debate in this nation right now. How much should the government do? Right? What should we do to take care of one another? And it is true that the church, and as much as we can, we need to help people who are in genuine need. But what do we owe to God? That's what should emerge out of the text. We owe Him everything. And when we've done just what's required of us, we should say, I'm still unworthy. I only did what's necessary. Your life, your gifts, your family, your circulatory system, your involuntary organs that beat right now, everything that you have is from Him. And John the Baptist put it well when he said, a man or a woman would have nothing unless it first been given to him from heaven. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 4, why do you boast of things that are gifts? Paraphrase. They came from heaven. Why do you boast about things that are gifts to you? We live in a society that's very ungrateful and a society that is very boastful. As a matter of fact, we are the most spoiled society. Think of America and all that we have, and yet simultaneously one of the most ungrateful. One writer said, track a sophomore at an Ivy League school. He gets everything that he wants, and still he's a spoiled brat. And he complains about what he doesn't have. That's the idea here. And moving into the text, we're going to see some important teaching. I came across a story about, in some parts of Mexico, hot springs and cold springs are found side by side. And because of the convenience of the natural phenomenon, the women often bring their laundry, they boil the clothes in the hot springs, and then they take them right to the adjacent cold springs. That's a very convenient thing that's happened here. And so a tourist who was watching this procedure of the Mexican women commented to his Mexican friend and guide and said, I imagine that they think old Mother Nature is pretty generous to supply such ample clean, hot, and cold water here side by side for their free use. The guide replied, no, senor. There's much grumbling because she supplies no soul. See, that's what we do. We get the hot and the cold spring side by side, and we say, but there's no soul. Right? God gives us all these blessings. And one of the characteristics of the unbelieving world is ingratitude. Paul says in the last days, perilous times will come. And of all the ugly lists that he gives in 1 Timothy 3:2, he says one of the things that will be characteristic of that generation is ingratitude. Romans 1:20 and 21 says, since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they, mankind, unbelieving mankind, are without excuse. For even Romans 1:21, though they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks. That is the characteristic of an unbelieving world. But let's face it, it can be our characteristic. We can have sometimes a really bad attitude. Sometimes we go through seasons where it's difficult to be thankful. Sometimes we even come to a meal and we have a tough time praying because we're in a season where we might even be questioning the goodness of God. I heard of a pastor who was serving at wartime, and he wrote this beautiful hymn about Thanksgiving. He wrote it as a table prayer for his family. They said of this pastor, because of wartime, he was doing, get this, 60 funerals a day. And in that time, he wrote one of the most beautiful hymns of Thanksgiving to teach his children that no matter what season of life we are in, we are to be thankful people. Now, the truth is that we sometimes catch ourselves being ungrateful. I do, I'm sure you do as well. The Bible says do all things without grumbling or complaining. You'll be working on that like me for the rest of your Christian walk, right? It's tough. You can get in a mode of ingratitude. And I want to show you out of the gate some verses that I think will encourage your soul and should reflect the heart of a believer. I want to take you to some Psalms first. Would you turn to Psalm 100? Psalm 100. I want to paint a picture of the life of a Christian, and then I want to take you to the Lucan account of the leper. Actually, the 10 lepers. Psalm 100, this is verse 1. It's 5 verses. Here's what it says. Shout joyfully to the Lord, all the earth. Psalm 100. Serve the Lord with gladness. Notice the words joyfully, gladness. Come before Him with joyful singing. Know, Psalm 100 verse 3, that the Lord Himself is God. It is He who has made us and not we ourselves. That's a big reason why we rejoice. He's our Creator. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. Enter His gates. When you come before Him, how should you enter? With thanksgiving. And His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him. Bless His name. For the Lord is good. Psalm 100 verse 5. His loving kindness, another reason to give thanks, is everlasting. And His faithfulness to all generations. Look at Psalm 105. Look at verse 1 with me. Psalm 105, 1. The psalmist writes, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord. Call upon His name. Make known His deeds among the peoples." Psalm 105, 2. Sing to Him. Sing praises to Him. Speak of all His wonders. 3. Glory in His holy name. Let the heart of those who seek the Lord be glad. Seek the Lord and His strength. Seek His face continually. You see, here are keys to gratitude. I find that my gratitude quotient grows as my eyes are on the Lord. If I get my eyes off the Lord and on my circumstances, then my gratitude barometer or thermometer, or whatever you want to call it, tends to go down. Psalm 136, which is a beautiful psalm talking about the goodness of the Lord and His love being everlasting. Psalm 136 verse 1 says, "Give thanks to the Lord." Why should you give thanks to the Lord? Because He's good. His loving kindness, here's another reason for thanks, is everlasting. His unfailing love, the Hebrew idea here is His hesed, or as the Hebrews say, chesed, right? It's unfailing. His unfailing love. That's why we rejoice. So if you're looking for things to give gratitude about, if you're looking for things to add into your prayers, thank Him for His everlasting love, that He does not give up on you. That He won't ever leave you or forsake you. Look at Psalm 138 verse 1. We got to make a commitment to this, and it's got to be from the heart. I will give thee thanks, Psalm 138, verse 1, with all my heart. I will sing praises to thee before the gods, or above all the gods. I will bow down toward thy holy temple and give thanks to thy name. Here's a reason. For thy loving kindness and what? And thy truth. Thou hast magnified thy word according to all thy name. On the day I called, thou did answer me. Thou did makes me bold with strength in my soul. I want you to see the connection between thanksgiving and strength. This is what the Lord does in our lives. Now turn to the New Testament for a second and go to the book of Ephesians. So what should come out of our mouth? Well, our mouth should be characterized by thanksgiving. Ephesians chapter 5. And instead of coarse jesting, which may have been the language of our past, and hopefully, I know we struggle with our language, but and what we talk about, but here's an encouragement. Ephesians 5 verse 4 says, there must be no filthiness and silly talk, Ephesians 5:4, or coarse jesting which are not fitting, but rather what? A giving of thanks. Skip down to Ephesians 5, look at verse 18. Gratitude is the language of those who are filled with the Spirit. Check it out. Ephesians